Good
So
evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Midlands Rugby Podcast. Phil, how you getting on?
I'm very well, mate. Nice week of COVID. Over that now, so hopefully back in the green. How about yourself?
Yeah, all right. You are not the only one that's been suffering from COVID. I am not. However, you obviously have such a weak immune system, mate. We need to cut and wool you for the rest of the season.
I
Uh,
mean, it's been, I'm that fashionable that I got it in 2023 for the first time.
you,
Um,
you still got an iPod Classic, haven't you?
I got a shuffle.
Yeah, I've seen you run it. It's more of a shuffle now. For those on the YouTubes, you'll see we've got a guest this week, James Fisher. Fish, how you getting on?
Evening, guys. Yeah, not bad, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on.
That's all right. It's always good to have someone on, and it is actually not as badly planned as previous weeks. Although we tried to get you on at short notice last week, it did mean that this week we didn't have to think about a guest, which was good. So, Fish, tell us about yourself. Why do you find yourself on the podcast? I'll edit that bit; it'll be fine. Why do you find yourself on the podcast, Fish?
Well, I think it's obviously you're desperate for guests, for one. But that aside, I've had the fortune and misfortune of refereeing Phil and his brother more times than I care to imagine. And so I suppose it's a different perspective of things. I guess that's why I'm here.
I mean, putting up with the Eggleshaws is relatively difficult anyway, on a day to day, let alone because I don't think either will mind me saying relatively opinionated, especially about the laws of rugby. But we'll get on. I'm sure we'll get on to what Phil was like on the pitch. But how long have you been refereeing for?
I started when I was 15, so 1997, a wee while ago.
I
Don't
was
be like that.
I was
Oh man, I
I
was the
was
youngest on the
3 years
pitch when I
old.
refereed you guys.
Yeah, I was 3 years old. How good does that make me
Oh,
feel?
Tom, don't do that, Tom.
So you started at 15. Why?
Yeah, so always loved rugby from when I first got a chance to play. I went to a school where rugby was pretty much the primary sport. Football was played by one team at sixth form only, and you had to be really very talented for even to be allowed to kick a ball around. So forced into rugby, fell in love with it massively, and then did what all players that think they're amazing do: overcommit to a tackle, hurt myself, ended up damaging my neck, and was told that my playing career should most probably come to a close. So as you can guess, 15-year-old lad, devastated. That's it. Oh, what am I going to do? Two really influential people in my life, a school coach and a rugby club coach, said, don't you dare stop. So I started coaching up at Mellish Rugby Club, your favourite rivals, up at Mellish back in 1996, 97. Started coaching up in Mellish, the age group below, and then one day the ref didn't turn up for a cup game, so Mellish put it on the first team pitch, and they went, "Go on then, you can go and do it." I went, "Oh, all right," and I refereed my first game of rugby, and I loved it. I've never enjoyed rugby participation like it, and I fell in love. I fell in love with an entirely new lane to rugby union that I didn't really appreciate until I was in it. And I just kept going and going from there, really. So yeah, continued refereeing for as much as I could, because back in those days, there were like 3, 4 referees around the country that weren't in their 50s or on the telly. It was a bit of a novelty. I was really lucky that the local referee society had a few people in it that took me under their wing. One key person, the late great Brian Parkinson, or Parky, looked after me, taught me what I needed to know sort of to get better. Sent me around the NLD, so I was sent around the task. My first, you'll love this, Tom. My first appointed game of rugby for NLD Referee Society was West Bridgeford Vets versus Newark Fifths in
Amazing.
1997.
Incredible.
Dan Sutton, again, the late great Dan Sutton, was on the pitch, and he was told that this new referee was coming, this child, which I was at 15, and he took me aside before the game and he said, "I'm going to teach you something every scrum. Just listen to what I tell you, and the day will be fine for you today." I'm like, "All right then, duly noted." No idea what I'm doing. So my mum took me there. She was on the touchline as she was for the first few years, just being my support. And every single scrum, Dan would pipe up, "Look at my arms, look at my arms. Look what he's doing with his shoulders there, James. That's illegal. Against a lesser fellow, you'd have to penalise him, but play on." And he would continue every scrum giving me this monologue of what was happening and what everybody was doing, and I was listening too hard to referee it. I was focusing on learning, not actually refereeing. So Dan refereed every scrum from the front row for the whole match, and taught me more in the 80 minutes. And I think I learned for a fair few years afterwards from the front, about the dark arts of the front row. So that was a baptism of fire.
Yeah, amazing. I've definitely witnessed certain front rowers think they're refereeing game, even when they're not so polite about it, to be fair. But no, that's fair enough. Were there a lot of comments when a 15-year-old comes up to ref?
It was so new. Not many people really knew what to say or do about it. And I had my mother in tow, and she's quite an intimidating woman at the best of times. Yeah, I think, touch wood, for new referees and young referees now, I had a fairly easy ride in terms of the scrutiny and the criticism, because I think it was so novel, and they didn't know if I was going to cry or not if they shouted at me, because ultimately I was a child surrounded by men. So that was a bit weird. But I was just very fortunate, I think, that the clubs in NLD, we are quite a lucky CB. I've been around the country to many different clubs over the years, and we are a really lucky CB with our clubs. They're very, very welcoming, I've always found. And I was looking back then with the same situation, to be fair.
Where's worst?
I couldn't possibly say which club was worst, but I think you've spoken about brands of rugby.
Yeah.
And brands of rugby carry certain brands of spectators.
The Yorkshire's the problem, is it?
That might give you a clue as to where you get more challenges and where you might get less challenges. But just about the question you asked, I got sent to referee ladies casuals ladies, back when, before the RFU paid any attention really to the women's game. And from the moment I arrived until the moment I left, they wouldn't call me sir. It was at the time that Harry Enfield was on the telly. So for the whole match, it was, oh yes, young man, from everybody for the entire match.
I bet that was one of the most intimidating games in your life.
They were just warm and friendly. My most intimidating game, Phil gave me a heads up on some of the topics and sort of my rugby worst and my rugby best. And my most intimidating game definitely falls under my rugby worst. So you can have that when you want it.
We'll save that. Going back to you reffing the ladies casuals, I went up to the rugby club at Paviour's last Wednesday before. There's been a new touch thing which has been started for women and ladies over 18. And I turned up, the person that was meant to be coaching, there was a rumour he wasn't coming. So Chev, who's now director of women's rugby, went, Tom, you can do it. And I went, yeah, okay, whatever. I've never been more intimidated in my life than 35, 30 to 50-year-old women telling me to fuck off when I said, well, I'm coaching you. And one of them, Phil, is your sister-in-law, went, fuck off.
Yeah, but they all know you, that's the issue.
Not all of them, actually.
No.
Not all
They're
of them.
still telling you to fuck off.
And they're still telling you stuff. They've obviously heard, they've read the reviews, listened to the pod. You said you had quite a nice ride in, but when you look at refereeing now compared to what it was, obviously it might have been a little bit more friendly for you than it has been others. But what are you finding at the minute are the current difficulties with refereeing?
That's quite a broad question, because just like players and as a coach to Phil, trying to bring the best out of each individual player and their unique challenges with the skills you're trying to deliver to them. Every referee is unique. And so some referees within NLD society, I could list the names of those referees that we could put in the middle of any game of rugby on any day at any time, and they'd do all right, and they wouldn't take any of it, and everyone would come away having had a good game, and everyone And there are some referees where you most probably wouldn't send them to certain clubs necessarily too early in their journey, because those clubs are a bit more communicative and passionate in how they feed back to referees and how they offer development during the game for us. So I definitely think, and this is pulling back to something you said in a previous cast, or a previous pod, I think you call it, there is more awareness of how laws should be applied these days. So there's more verbal expectation sharing with the referees. And that's sometimes done by captaining correctly, politely, a coach, etc., etc. And sometimes it's done by a spectator or a parent that's just forgot that the creche actually closes in an hour, so they do need to come and pick their child up. But the challenge these days are more from off the pitch than I would say on the pitch. But I've not blown a whistle for a wee while. I spend most of my days with clipboards and earpieces now, watching referees more than actually getting involved in the physical games themselves. But it is something I've observed.
Yeah,
I think that's quite a good point, and I don't know how that's happened. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, James. When you started, the game had been quite the same for a good number of years. The laws hadn't changed, and there wasn't that much focus on manipulating the laws. What feels like annually nowadays. Everyone hears about law changes and suddenly thinks that they have to be, ahead of the game and what's our new tactic now. This is happening and all this, and I think that gives everyone the sort of the false opinion that something has to change because the laws have changed.
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone wants to become an expert on it and stuff like that. So I wonder whether that might be a reason as to why everyone thinks they've got an opinion on everything nowadays.
If I could actually said manipulating the laws, is that from your side? Who's doing the manipulating? The union.
So I mean, so I've been playing since 2000 and since I started playing professionally in 2007. The scrum laws has changed every 2 years at minimum, probably.
It's been tinkered with, yeah. I think that's fair to say.
But then every time it changes, someone goes, right, this is how we're going to scrum now. This is now this has happened. We're going to scrum like this. When actually, at the end of the day, it's just a way of restarting the game.
Yeah.
And you just have to go with what's said. And I just think that because it's so heavily hammered home on the TV, or we've got ex-players now as pundits, not crazy Scottish men. So we've actually got a lot of analysis happening. So everyone thinks that they know what they're talking about because they've listened to Ben Kay on TV, who, great respect to Ben Kay, he wasn't exactly a classy rugby player, was he? So I just feel like that maybe people hear about the changes, whereas between, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but between 1985 and 1998, there wasn't one law change or something ridiculous.
I started refereeing in '97, so I'm not sure I'm the right person to.
Yeah, but there had been a period where everything was the same.
Yeah,
and there was no real changes. And now that we're changing to this so often, I think people feel like they have to remark upon it and have to become a knowledgeable source or fount of knowledge for the laws. Whereas to me, I can't say I agree with all the changes, but I don't get too hung up on them. I don't. It's still rugby at the end of the day, and if there's more penalties because people are tackling high, well, they've been tackling like that for 30 years, and it's going to be very difficult for them to change. But it's about making sure the young lads are getting it right because they're going to have to stick with it for what appears to be the foreseeable. So
I think if you look back at all of the law changes that have happened during my day, and I use this very example when I'm delivering to new referees. When I first started refereeing, Phil, back in the day, when the player went over the ball in a tackle, I was refereeing the foot on body to make sure he went forward to back, not up and down. I was like, you can rake him all day. You just can't stamp on him, though. That's not allowed in the law. So you're thinking, hang on a second. And then the laws changed in the line-out lifts, and everyone was like, oh, it's going to ruin the game. Competition's gone from the line-out, whereas now the line-out is a massively competitive area, especially when it's done right. There are two reasons for me why laws change. And one is that the RFU or World Rugby have realised that there's safety or welfare implications in existing laws. And we want to be a game that's still here in 150, 200 years, not dwindled down to those players that have got thick enough skulls to keep going.
It still does have a really big...
I mean, don't knock us, Jesus.
Yeah, your family's around for generations. You're absolutely sound, I think.
I still think he looks like one of the Easter Island statues. It's amazing the size of that head.
Yeah. You guys only need to worry if they bring in a law that you have to pass. That's the only thing you would have to worry about as family.
Poisons.
I'm still annoyed there's a rule about having to fucking catch it.
So yeah, law one change safety implications for our stakeholders, the game, the reason we're all doing it. The second reason for law change is because canny coaches, not like yourself there, look at the laws and go, what can we do within the laws to gain an advantage? I know, let's have a caterpillar ruck. Or I know, let's go long and make a really, really tiny gate rather than having a nice sized gate so people aren't getting trod on and it's actually easier to deal with. So laws get manipulated by coaches due to the age of professionalism that want to get that extra advantage, that extra advantage, that extra advantage. And sometimes powers that be go, no, we don't like the fact you've outthought us on that one. We're going to change it. And sometimes they go, okay, that's not a bad idea, actually. Let's remove the barrier for that in the first place so that you can actually do that the way you want to do it. So they're the two reasons for law changes for my mind. And I don't moan at all about the safety one. And as a referee for so long, I mean, I've coached and I've played, but I'm a referee. I've been doing it too long to be anything else. The second reason for the law changes are a little bit of a, well, it's your own fault. If you didn't make them do that, they wouldn't have done this. And we're just the ones in the middle going, we're just told to penalise you. So that's where I see. And with this current law change, the most recent one, it's the most publicised law change ever of any rugby law changes, which means the guy on the park's dog has done the tackle height quizzes, which means even they know what their opinion of this is. And if they've got the quiz right, they're a qualified referee. And that means that there are more people going, oh, that's high, that should be this, that should be that. And yeah, they're sharing their opinions. When I was at games that people would pay to watch, you would tolerate a lot more noise because they were paying their hard-earned fee, to go and watch a game of rugby. But when you're at a game where no one's paid anything and everyone's there to volunteer, it's a lot harder to swallow when everybody thinks they know best. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you
mean. Yeah. We've got people at the house. No, I do think with the most recent one, the one everyone knows around about tackle height, the narrative was interesting for the use of that term in the sense of there are some big rugby pundits who have big platforms saying straight away it's going to kill the community game, which then before the start of the season we were saying that in the changing rooms, but actually the way it's been refed on the most part, you look at it and you go, well, hang on, as a kid I was taught to tackle even lower than the stern. I was taught legs, only ever legs. And I know that's not been the case and people will struggle. And it will mean some people can't play rugby anymore. But when you've got such big high profile names like Hugo Monye was saying stuff on pods, and these are people which aren't necessarily known for being opinionated. I mean, if it was an Andy Good or Dawson, you'd just kind of ignore them after a while anyway. But someone so level-headed like Monye, he saw the benefits, but said it was still in the game, and it didn't really help anyone in the community game who didn't really understand why it was happening.
Sorry, can I just interject, Tom? Who's Monye?
Oh, so
Hugo's mate.
Hugo's got a French cousin. He's been at the World Cup. Monye. How do you say it then? Yeah, if you get
Hugo Monye.
Monye.
Yeah, not Monye. Monye.
Oh, in the southeast, he's Monye. He changes. It's like Southern Southwell, isn't it?
Because you're so close to France.
I am extremely close to France in Gillingham. It's so close, it stinks. I've completely lost my train of thought now. Thanks for that, Phil. Do you want to move on first, Phil?
Yeah, let's. So we'll skirt about this. So I reckon you probably ref me for the first time when I was 14 or 15, I think, in a counties game. So that would have been for Nottinghamshire versus, I think it was Lincolnshire, and it was, you probably won't remember it because you lived in 1,000 games, but it was my fourth ever game of rugby, and I played for Notts against Lincolnshire, and it was at Newark on the second team pitch, and it was 0-0. And the ball did not. Yeah, great refereeing from you. It wasn't your fault at all. It was windy. It was raining sideways, and the ball never left sort of between the two 10-meter lines. It was an awful game of rugby. But I reckon you must have refed me 30 to 40 times easily, and you'll have refed Nathan more. Real question is, who's worse?
Yeah, we know the answer is Nathan.
So this is an interesting one because, and I thought about, I knew you'd ask me this because I've literally refereed, carded, shouted at, and smiled with both of you. I don't know how many times. But Nathan as a coach and Nathan as a player are very, very different creatures. I'm going to hold my mouth until I've had a season of you at a coach at a level where I'm actively involved with the referees. and I'll answer that question once I've had a season with you at level 6. Because as a player, you were both actually quite delightful in the sense that I used to try and be quite a respectful but humorous match official even when I was younger. And I think that got me over quite a few barriers with both of you, because I could break a smile out of you in the middle of a game. I knew we were going to get through it okay. And Nathan's not dissimilar. If you can crack his shell, he's fine.
No, we are. Again, it's another thing that we're quite similar on. Is the fact that we both can break character in the middle of a rugby game. We're not like these hot-headed. Well, Nathan is a bit more hot-headed than I am, but we are not hot-headed individuals that have to stay in that zone for the entire game. But he will take offence to the fact that I just said that he's hot-headed. But yeah, I've always enjoyed you, Refi. I think you've got a really nice approach to it. And you do like have this amazing swing from, fish messing around and having a giggle at a scrum or just before a scrum to this like amazing, serious and in control person as well. You manage to like swing the whole dial, if you like.
Bipolar to me.
Oh, wow, that might be it.
I don't believe I'm diagnosed with anything, but that's very kind of you. And I was a police officer after I was a referee, and I felt head and shoulders above most of my peers after just like 6-7 weeks in the job, because I dealt with 30 people trying to kill each other every week for years. I wasn't a Bobby till I was in my 20s. So I think that ability to go from I'm a human being here to add value to your hobbying, but I'm also in charge, so please don't take the piss.
Yeah, I think that's not an easy line to walk, though, is it? And we've had discussions in the past about being refereed by certain people, and I've been fortunate enough to get refereed by a lot of what we see now in the Premiership and in the World Cup even. And not all of those guys are approachable, or you can't have that little joke with them in and around the rug. But yeah, I think a lot of that, especially all the lads that we've had brief discussions about, I really enjoy the way you do it, and the fact that you're now mentoring other referees is only good for the NLD. Well, to a certain extent, maybe they can improve their banter, but apart from that,
I don't train that.
Have we got lots of new refs coming through in the NLD?
Yeah, we're really actually lucky as a society. Every society got hit on COVID, and that did happen, and people found new hobbies and new ways to spend time with their family, which they haven't sort of left, and they've stayed away from the game for that, and that's absolutely fine, And like you said on one of your one of your previous pods, a few referees actually did say, "I'm not refereeing these new laws, sod it, I'm off." But it was like 2. So it wasn't a mass exodus at all. And then we've been really fortunate again as a society that we've got sort of people looking at different ways to connect and recruit and grow our numbers. And as a result, we have actually had in excess of 60 members join in the last 18 months.
Oh, that's really good.
Which is mad numbers, because we would get maybe 5-6 a year for the last 20 years. And it's not in anything. Yeah, we've contributed, but it's also, you have to recognise the RFU's match officials team. I believe when I say it often pays me to do that. But you have to recognise them, because they've done great social media, which have allowed us to piggyback things and share things and get more momentum. We've got a few key members that have got some really good connections within marketing and things like that. So we've had professionals look at our social media and how to get some sort of traction from it, and it's paid dividends, And we've got clubs like yourselves at PAVS. I had the fortune of coming up to PAVS in my other sort of hat as an RFU educator, and I came up and I delivered an introduction to refereeing at your club to a load of members from mainly pavers, but also other people from other clubs came along, and they're all new referees. And 2 of those have got in touch and said, "I want to be society," and things like that. So the more we get opportunity to deliver these introduction sessions, and the more chance we get to speak with coaches and other club members that are able to help their volunteers choose a different lane when the current lane they're in comes to a close for whatever reason, you know, that's sort of how we've gathered momentum. So it's down to our clubs, and it's down to support from the union, and also the stuff our members have been actively trying to do.
That's really good. I mean, I know that one of our young lads has signed up and done a course, and he's really enjoyed it, and you know, he's still playing at the moment, but he's really taken to it. And I know his dad's heavily involved in the refereeing society. And we had a team of 3 NLD referees at the club yesterday for a under 15s NLD Cup game, and it was really good and really well sort of appreciated by everyone, and they did a good job. And as a 3, considering they weren't mic'd up, did a great job on a good game. So yeah, I know that Paviers really appreciate what the NLD refereeing society tries to do, and it's not easy. And we will jib and jab, and the guys on the balcony will shout because, you know, they've got nothing else to do in their lives. So we think you're doing a great job. I've, like I say, I've always enjoyed the times that we've been on the pitch together, and I'm not speaking by myself there. I think everyone will say it, and my brother was very excited to find out that you were on the podcast today. He did send me a load of abusive questions, but I won't ask that.
He sends me his own abusive questions. Don't you worry about that.
I guess one thing that me and you spoke about briefly earlier is obviously you have another caveat to your refereeing and rugby involvement, is what you describe as your sexuality.
How do I identify?
It's something that I've always known, but it's never been something that I've ever questioned or queried or really spoken to you about. But I guess could you sort of touch on how you opened yourselves up to that in rugby at the time that you did, and what sort of, I'm not going to say what difference that made to you, because I know the way you are, you don't take differences very well, especially not differences of opinion on offsides and stuff. But
there is no other opinion. The referee's opinion is the sole arbiter.
I've had to say that so many times this season.
I love it. I've got tattooed. No, I'm joking.
But how did you sort of not broach, because it sounds like you were forced into it, but I know that you have always been quite forward about it and not dilly-dallied or been really that nervous.
Do you want to keep stumbling around, or do you want me?
Yeah, if you could just jump in now, that'd be great.
Phil took the piss out of you speaking to women before, and he's really messed this one up.
Well, it was interesting when you're talking about being intimidated by a load of women. No.
No. Yeah, fair.
Yeah, okay, so I identify as a gay man. If I was being totally honest with modern young people, I would definitely identify as pansexual, but we won't go into the ins and outs of all of that. The key thing is, I'm gay, I like guys, I like masculinity. It's always been my thing. And how is that in the world of rugby when you're surrounded by loads of masculine people, by stigma, by people's conceptions and misconceptions of what that then means? And it wasn't easy at first. When I'm fortunate in the fact that I've always been aware of my own sexuality. It's never been in question for me, and I'm very lucky on that side of things. A lot of people don't have that luck to be able to realize themselves as soon as I did. So I made a conscious decision that I wanted to be heavily involved in rugby, but the game at the time didn't strike me as necessarily the most accepting place for someone that was openly gay. So I just stayed sort of in the closet, in the sense that I never gave my partner a gender or a name. I allowed everybody else to make assumptions. And yeah, assumptions they made. Referee societies back then were very male chauvinistic environments. And the amount of times I was like, oh, don't sell into the women's matches, a young like that here, it built a rat like a drain pipe, those women, and rah, rah, rah. And they were all joking about the fact that I was clearly shouldn't be trusted around your daughters and rah, rah. And I sort of went, yeah, and just went along with it all. So I'm not particularly effeminate. I try not to identify or portray as too particularly camp, because it's not a characteristic that I align with. So I don't think it was ever really questioned whether I was or wasn't. I never made it anybody else's business until they made it their own business, and they often regretted it. But yeah, the statement piece, if you will, was I waited until I'd made it into the national leagues as a match official, and I came out to the current leadership team of the national league team, and things did change a little. Not gonna lie, it did. I didn't feel it as like I belonged as much as beforehand, because I was at the time the only person of that persuasion, and it was the start of the end of my national league career, because after a season of really not feeling like part of the crew anymore, and this is the other part of the story, I made my mistake of making rugby my job. I took a job at the RFU as a women's rugby development manager. And I was living and refereeing in the same area that I was working as a rugby professional. So my Saturday refereeing time wasn't escapism from life. It was continuation of work. And so I was being questioned about volunteer funding. It's back in the seal of approval days. So, what are we going to do this? And when are we going to get that? And I'm like, I'm here to blow a whistle. I don't care about your board. I'm literally here as a referee. Yes, my car is covered in roses, but ignore that. They make me drive it. I'm here to blow a whistle. And so I mixed my hobby with my job, so I lost my hobby. And I found that I personally didn't feel that it was I didn't feel it was the right place for me. So I gave up rugby altogether, took a job in hospitality, left the union, gave up refereeing, and did 5.5 years running TGI Fridays restaurants. And I didn't watch a single rugby match, didn't speak to any of my rugby friends. I literally just cut myself off from the game entirely. I needed to re-find my reasons for rugby. So I did. And then I came back, and God bless all of you for having me. But no, NLD, local society, local clubs, never an issue. In fact, I can't remember the lad's name. You had him on one of your pods. He used to be your captain back in the day. Big Null, possibly. Is that right? We were at a sevens tournament at Casuals, and someone sort of boasted that he'd sidestepped him, and he went, "Oh, don't be gay." And I was refereeing, and he turned and went, "Oh shit, fish!" I went, "Big blast the whistle, come here." I went, "I don't give a fuck. Get over yourself." Just carried on. Because we are so blessed in three counties. I haven't seen a single episode that has made me feel in any way unwelcome from clubs. And I've always, in the last 10 years or so, I've always been very open and honest about things. If people have misgendered my partner, I've said, no, he, and he's twice the size of you with more tattoos, so I'd be careful. So, I make it people's business if they get it wrong or make any assumptions, but generally it's no one's business. I don't care which way anybody else lays, so I don't expect them to care about me.
No, that's and yeah, everyone's really, like, no one's ever really questioned it to me. Like, oh yeah, there's fish, and the last thing they comment about is your sexuality. It's not like, yeah,
but they comment, so we're not there yet.
No, they don't comment about sexuality.
Oh, they said the last thing they comment about, so they'll say this, and this. Oh
no,
gay.
No. So it's like, oh, he's not here again, is he? Fucking hell, not.
Fucking hell, Phil. We are getting cancelled.
This is wearing pink. That's rare.
Yeah.
We've heard it all.
Yeah, at one point, did you have pink boots as well? At one point,
no, I didn't. Don't you dare. That is. I'm going to name and shame Greg Hodgson. I'm looking at you. It might be breast cancer awareness, and that's fine, but they're still pink boots.
There was another ref who had pink boots though when I was a younger.
We have had some really flamboyant and eccentric people across the days. I think you're referring to, and a man that I do believe is a true legend of community rugby in NLD, Andy Erridge.
Yes, that's it. He had pink boots.
And Andy was a true proud eccentric. And I didn't ever, one of my big regrets, this is a bit soppy, but one of my big regrets is I never actually came out to Andy, because he died before I'd made it to that place where I was comfortable doing so. And I wish I had, because I think he felt quite lonely as the only person walking his walk for quite a while. So, but we've got Craig Maxwell Keys on the telly box. We've got referees moving up the levels that are open in their sexuality and their identity. And I think that's just brilliant. It is a game for all, and that just proves it.
Definitely. Well, Tom, we couldn't have timed that better if we tried.
Oh, I had more questions.
Oh.
I had one more question. Well, two, but they're quite easy to answer.
We've got less than a minute, don't you?
No, I've extended it. Don't worry about it.
Oh, well done.
I'm a good man. before you came out, and even when you're in the national leagues, did you get somewhat frustrated at rugby using this narrative of we are all inclusive, yet you didn't feel like you were necessarily accepted?
No, because, and this is, I'm going to make myself either very popular or very unpopular with a lot of referees now. We're a different sort. We're
Right.
not a rugby club. A referee society is not comparable to a rugby club. We're all used to doing it on our own. So a lot of us aren't even great team players. Some of us better than others. But not all referees are great team players either. So when I moved into the refereeing echelons, and that was back in the day when Ed Morrison was still about, and this will make me sick. I turned up to my first national panel welcome meeting for all the newbies, and he stands there with his port in his hand and his black tie shenanigans on, and goes, "Welcome to the most exclusive boys club in the world." And one or two people that may or may not still be involved in the higher ends of refereeing at the moment were stood behind him, here, here, cheers, cheers, rah, rah, rah. And I thought, oh, fuck off. Literally, fuck off. This is so not, get over yourselves. And so I think that paired with the way things maybe were, it wasn't back then what it is now. Now it is progressive. Now it is forward thinking. We've got female match officials finally in the National League. When I was in the National League, no word of a lie, was said by somebody who remain unnamed, over my dead body, will a woman ever referee National League rugby? Now, again, they may or may not still be involved in National League rugby. I've no idea. I couldn't say. But that was the vibe back then. It was a very, very different world. And it's not forgiving or making excuses or anything like that. It just is what it is. And now we are what we are. Evolution doesn't always happen right. Evolution doesn't always happen at the pace that we all desire. But you can't deny the game's evolved, and it's evolved for the better.
Yeah.
And sometimes it goes fast and then it slows down a bit and then it speeds up. But that's fine because I still love it. And while that's happening, I'm not going to moan too much.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a great point. And, you know, I was fortunate enough to be in the National Leagues.
Was it you?
Championship. I've only abused fish when it's come to play years.
Yeah, and I never met him when he was being paid.
But we had Claire. You probably remember Claire Fish. Yeah, Claire came up the ranks, and I think she ran touch a few times when I was at Doncaster. Definitely, she was doing the touch lines a few times, and that was really nice because obviously she started refereeing as I started playing, so we kind of come through it together, and that was quite nice to see her there. And I think she was one of the first women to referee in the National Leagues.
She was. There was a fabulous lady who's now part of the RFRU's board, Claire Daniels. I think she was the first female National League match official. August followed up, and obviously Claire Hognett does TMO and stuff like that. She went through to the game. She's got a cap, and rightly so, as a female match official. So we've had and we were part of Claire's journey in NLD. God, we can't take credit for all of it. She evolved as she left us and moved on as referees and players. You know, when you left Nottingham, you evolved again. Now, as a coach, you know, you're continuing your growth on this journey. So, yeah, Claire had a great journey. We were proud to be part of it.
Yeah, she was brilliant, and I mean, some lads had. It wasn't anything to do with her, the fact that she was a woman or anything like that. She was strong-willed, and a lot of lads struggled to deal with that. And I know one of my ex-teammates really struggled to be shouted at by her all the way through age groups, all the way through professional rugby. He really struggled with it. But then I remember them bumping into each other when she was doing the National Leagues, and they were getting on like house on fire. So it did take a while, and there's other parts of the game that will take a while, like you say. But I do feel like rugby's trying, and you're never going to get everything right first time. So hopefully it will keep evolving, as you say, and that will be really good for the sport. And hopefully we are that inclusivity. Is that the right word?
We're getting there.
Yeah, close. You know what I mean.
You're learning English, GCSE.
Yeah.
Well
At least I don't write things for a living. Oh wait. But yeah, that will keep going, and I don't think we're there yet. And I do think there are people still involved in the RFU at the higher level, National League and above, that have a warped point of view. But time keeps on ticking, and soon they'll be dead. So we'll be absolutely fine.
I saw you there, Fish.
Gosh.
You were neither nodding or shaking your head.
Well, I was thinking about you, Tom, and your pending job application.
Oh no, I didn't get it. Don't worry about it.
Oh, in which case, yeah, both
Yeah,
feet,
I
mate. Go in both feet.
I'm dying to know, because you said at the start, what is the worst rugby
Okay,
moment?
I wrote this down to make sure I got it right. The worst one was 2001. I was refereeing Berry Hill versus Chinner in an exchange game at. Look at that face. That is it.
Yeah.
And it was as much my fault as theirs. I made the mistake, and this is why we say to referees, never prejudge, never prejudge. I made the mistake of reading reports and going down with the mindset that Berry Hill will always stamp on a player on the floor and that Chinner like to fight, which was a misconception. But I went in with that misconception.
Misconceptions are strong. You might not have prejudged, but that pretty much sums up
Anyway,
both teams.
we're talking 20 plus years ago, so no offense to current teams. I may or may not have included in my pre-match chat to the captains my awareness of potential behaviours. So I kind of set myself up, and they made me pay. After about 25 minutes, we got to the stage where the captain was saying, "Ref, can I have a word?" And when I turned around, his pack leader would smack his opposite number, and I was being actively distracted so that they could kick 7 bells of shit out of each other, and it became a game who could fight for the longest before I actually got to referee it. After 63 minutes, because that's the golden time that referees can fuck off and the score can still stand. So by now, I'm off. Anything before that game generally gets replayed. So if we really want to put both, heels in, we'll do to the 63 so the game's decided, and then we'll bloody leave. Obviously, I'm speaking purely from personal experience, not on behalf of referees. So yeah, 63 minutes came in. I blew full time. I called the captains together. I said, "I'm sorry I turned up. I'm sorry you turned up. Goodbye." And I left. And I was being assessed. And the assessor came through and went, "Don't go to the clubhouse. Get straight in your car and fuck off back to Nottingham." The assessor. I was like, "What?" I never saw the match report. It got sent to Parky, the late great Parky, who went, "That does not need to see the light of day ever again. Destroy it, burn it, get rid of your hard drives." And to this day, I have no idea what he actually put on paper about me. But I got in the car, I cried. Back in those days, we were on exchanges. So one referee would drive other referees down there. So I then had to go and collect 2 of the referees with like panda eyes. Not that my makeup had risen, but I did cry a lot. Makeup was intact. Picked them both up, drove back to Nottingham, not really saying much, feeling like that night, didn't sleep at all night, really regretted my decision to referee. Fortunately, chat with the right people over the next couple of days, out the system, next game, not a problem. But yeah, for that 48-hour period, I hated my decision to referee and wished I never started.
I mean, to
Yeah.
be fair, so that was a Oxford exchange, Oxfordshire.
Well, Forest of Dean, wasn't it? So I was
Of
down in
course,
Berry Hill.
yeah.
It was
Yeah.
Gloucestershire officially.
Gloucestershire, around there, isn't it? Somerset
like
way. I mean, I've played down that way. I was lucky enough to play Cinderford for a couple of years, and that's different gravy down there. That's just a different world, and it's always wet. And what else do you do when it's wet than fight? But yeah, that's a bit of a baptism of fire. So you've only been like
I was
19?
19, yeah.
Wow.
We didn't have child protection policies back then and safeguarding. I was refereeing adults at 15, 16 years of age and having to shower with them because there were no other showers. And it was just it happens. Then we kind of got wise to the fact that this may not be safe for everyone going forward.
Yeah, fair. Before we go down that hole of life, that was a really bad term to use as well, wasn't it? Best moment in rugby.
Refereeing Twickenham. Can't remember the exact year. I was trying to think about it. I couldn't pull it out. We used to referee so there was a sports company called Gulliver's that used to do events for schools and clubs, and the finals used to get played at Twickenham Stadium. And cool. NLD were really fortunate that we've got a great relationship with that organisation, so we always referee for them. And we would send referees to Twickenham to referee all of the finals, and it would generally be a curtain raiser for a bigger game. And I got to referee. It was my turn of going through the lower age groups to referee the senior junior age, which was the absolute curtain raiser for England versus the Barbars. And we had tunnel passes for the whole day, and I had the pleasure of meeting Zinzambrook. And he showed me how much bigger elite is
Yeah.
to everything else in this sport.
I mean, he was a massive bloke.
Oh, yeah, not many people dwarfed me because I've been 6'1" since I was about 14, 15, but I've never been particularly big. But he just dwarfed the hell out of me, and I just felt like an absolute child. When I was anyway, but I felt
So,
really.
okay, was he playing then? No,
Yeah, he was
probably.
playing for the Barbars game.
Oh, he was.
Yeah, it was back in the. I think it was the late 90s, just after I'd
Right, yes,
started
that'd been right near the end of his career.
Yeah. So he was in the Barbars. It was it was epic.
Well, I didn't see much of him play because I didn't really have an interest in rugby until about 2003, just before the World Cup. I didn't jump on the bandwagon. I got forced on it by my family, but I got called Zinzan for a few years because I came from football. I had a real bad. I didn't really fancy taking it into contact. I just absolutely leather it with my boot. So they started nicknaming me Zinzan when I joined Nottingham Academy, and that soon kind of told me that maybe I shouldn't be kicking it all the time.
Absolutely not. Before I let you go, if I gave you a chance to do a little pitch to why should people of any age, but particularly younger people involved in rugby, get involved into refereeing as well?
I would ask the question: do you think? How far do you want to take your rugby? Do you want to take your rugby as far as it can possibly go, or do you want to stay as a player for your entire career? If you think you can make it to the top of the game as a player, then you follow your heart. If you want to get to the top of the game but don't think you'll make it as a player, change lane as soon as you can and commit to the new lane, because the experience is second to none. It's the best seat in the house. You can add so much value and you can keep so many people safe and happy. It's just the most amazing feeling. So just get involved in refereeing.
That's a
Look
great
at that. We media train our referees in the NLD as well. Look at it, it's absolutely mint. Fish, thank you so much, mate. It's been absolutely mint to talk to you. Sorry Phil can't get his fucking words out yet again. And also I've googled it, it is Monnier, not Monia. So we can all take that one away. There's definitely a little apostrophe over that E somewhere. But Phil, have you got any wise words? I'd like to know what these are going to be.
Oh, no, I've wasted them all on my very poor introduction to James. But again, I just want to thank you for coming on, Fish. I know you don't particularly enjoy doing these kind of things, so it was very, very kind of you to show some stiff upper lip and crack on with it. And I'm hopefully you've got something out of it too.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
We will report back. We'll come back to you, sorry, next year once Phil's had a year in head coach role, and we'll get.
And you can slag me off to high heaven.
Yeah, cool. All right, thank you very much. See you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.